Well, you mentioned the debate, and there's no doubt that Kamala Harris did a lot better than most people expected, myself included. So now she's spoiling for another one. Here she is.
You probably heard I would like another debate, so I'm hoping the former vice president will agree to that. But we have a lot more to discuss.
So there we go. There's Kamala Harris. She wants another debate, but Donald Trump, he's not so keen.
The problem with another debate is that it's just too late. Voting has already started. She's had her chance to do it with Fox. You know, Fox invited us on, and I waited, and they turned it down. But now she wants to do a debate right before the election with CNN because she's losing badly.
Yeah, Kristen, explain this to me, because I think this is a mistake by Donald Trump. I think he's better off getting back into the ring with her and doing it properly, mentioning all those issues you just outlined for us.
Trump needs another debate here. This race is in a dead heat, but the enthusiasm has been with Kamala ever since they chose her as a replacement for an actual corpse. Trump saw that huge bump of enthusiasm after the first assassination attempt, but he needs another defining moment to seize back some of those percentage points that he has lost in the last couple of weeks. Trump looks weak if he says he's not going to debate her again. He needs to define his opposition. That's what he needs to do. But Chris, if he does a second debate, he needs to be much more disciplined in his preparations. Every single answer that he gives, regardless of the question, needs to be on the topics where Kamala Harris is actively destroying this country. Again, it's crime, immigration, economy. Crime, immigration, economy. And he should paint vivid pictures with anecdotes of actual Americans who are struggling, who go to their schools, who go to their hospitals. They are overflooded with illegal immigrants. They can't afford to go buy groceries, and yet we are sending all of our tax dollars across the world to other nations to start wars around the world. We have a border that's completely open. We have cities that are cesspools of crime. These are the pictures he needs to paint, and he can't let her bait him into these petty debates about rally sizes or whatever she tried to do last time.
Spot on. I think he needs a debate. It's the only way to present those issues to her, to pin her down on those issues, because the media certainly won't do it for him. So he should be pushing for more debates, not running away from them. Just in the meantime, you talk about weakness. What about the bloke who's still in the White House, still the leader of the free world, Joe Biden, this week? A couple of stuff-ups, but let's pick one of them. Here he is, where he spots a helicopter while he's hosting the Quad leaders.
Hello, hello, hello. By the way, that little thing up in the air there, don't worry about it. It's not armed. Well,
apart from being bizarre and seemingly befuddled, it's in relatively poor taste, isn't it, to tell everyone to relax, it's not armed?
Of course. I mean, it's just a complete joke that this man is president of the United States still. And remember, Kamala Harris went along with the lie that he was totally fine and capable until the last minute when they made her the nominee. But what Americans need to realize is that it doesn't matter who their nominee is, whether it's Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. We are running against a Democrat machine. And the sooner Republicans realize that, the sooner they can effectively run against their opposition.
That is so right. The same machine that's been running the operation while Joe Biden has been asleep would be running Kamala Harris. Nothing would change. You're so spot on. You should be the main strategist for the Republicans at the moment, Kristen. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll catch you next week.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Well, there's just 43 days to go until the US presidential election, and if you can believe it, the race is becoming stranger and stranger by the day. The latest Harris campaign ad is targeted at white dudes. Take a look.
Hey, white dudes. So I think we're all pretty sick of hearing how much we suck. Every time you go online, it's the same story. We're the problem. And yeah, some white dudes are. Trump and all his MAGA buddies are out there making it worse, shouting nonsense in their stupid red hats and acting like they speak for us when they don't. So I've been doing my own research and decided to check out Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. And before you jump down my throat, they're actually talking to guys like us.
Well, joining us now is Based Politics co-founder, journalist and commentator Brad Palumbo. Brad, great to see you. Why do the Democrats insist on dividing every part of the electorate into identity groups?
They're addicted to identity politics, and I think this ad sets a new world record for cringeworthy pandering. I mean, what is this accent? You guys may not have picked up on it, but this is some weird combination of a Boston accent, maybe a Jersey accent, maybe Midwest. I don't know, but is this what they think white dudes are like? I mean, there's something about this that is just so tokenizing and so blatantly an attempt to pander to people that it's bizarre. And personally, I imagine how whites for Trump would go over, right?
Yeah.
It would go over like a lead balloon, right? And that's good. We don't need racial balkanization of our politics in 2024. It's gross and strange stuff. It really is. But this is what passes for progressive in my country these days.
Well, Brad, speaking of strange stuff, let's talk about the media coverage of this election. A CNN reporter interviewing a Trump supporter at a MAGA boat parade has been well and truly owned after suggesting that this guy shouldn't be concerned about the cost of living because, you know, he owns a boat.
Let me maybe ask like a slightly impolite question. But, you know, if you can afford a boat, you're not hurting so bad, right? Because a boat costs a lot of money and it's a lot of upkeep.
Listen, nobody gave me I earned everything that I've got. I'm retired military, retired power plant, and I am successful and retired and with boats, jet skis, because I did it right.
I think it's interesting that people who are a little bit more comfortable are still so concerned about the economy. Did you see what I'm saying?
Because I want my money to go further.
Brad, even given how biased CNN can be, I mean, that's pretty incredible, is it not?
It's really wild stuff. I don't know why they aired this. They thought this was a good look for them? No, it just showed you how out of touch many in the mainstream media are. Because one, it's factually wrong to suggest that everyone who owns a boat is extremely wealthy. A lot of them are middle class, and some people own a boat instead of a home. So it's just doesn't mean you're fabulously wealthy and don't need to worry about the price of gas or food. But even then, the CNN reporter seems shocked by the idea that he might care about the economy, even if he's personally pretty well off, because it affects everybody. And Republicans are not, in fact, these selfish, greedy people who only care about themselves. It really shows you the stereotype and contempt that at least some people in mainstream media have towards MAGA supporters. And I thought it was a very revealing clip, and I'm surprised they let it go to air.
Oh, I was surprised it was genuine at first. I had to double check that myself, that this was actually CNN. Ridiculous. Well, speaking of ridiculous, we've heard some pretty outrageous things in this presidential campaign, but Brad, I reckon this one tops the lot. A commentator on MSNBC reckons Vladimir Putin will be intimidated by Kamala Harris because she's black. Check this out.
Kamala Harris would be just the opposite. Why? Because she's an inspiration. As a black woman, the product of a mixed marriage, our credibility as a nation, you know, that we would be able to allow, our country is so great that we're allowed a woman like that to become the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States. That is going to send a powerful message all over the world. People like Vladimir Putin are going to say, hey, wait a minute, these guys, you know, they truly have a democratic country.
Brad, your thoughts?
I'm almost lost for words. The stupidity of the suggestion that Vladimir Putin is going to be wowed by the boxes Kamala Harris checks off on the census. Newsflash, MSNBC, he doesn't care. He's going to look at her and see weakness. He's going to see her incoherent word salad. And frankly, he's been undeterred by the Biden-Harris administration these last few years. He looked at them and didn't seem at all impressed or stunned by their diversity and equity and inclusion. No, he decided to do an illegal invasion of Ukraine under their watch. So this is identity politics obsession to the nth degree, and it shows you how addiction to identity really corrodes your thinking and just pushes you into absolute brain rot territory. There's nothing wrong with a black person or an orange person or a white person or any other kind of person being president, but it's not an accomplishment, and it's certainly not going to frighten foreign dictators that we have so much diversity in America. They could care less. They're looking at the cold, hard facts of the situation.
Absolutely. Hey, Brad Palumbo, thanks once again for helping us to make sense of America.
Thanks,
we really appreciate your time.
Elon Musk is encouraging a hilarious parody ad mocking Kamala Harris to go viral on X after California Governor Gavin Newsom signed a law to eliminate deepfake and other AI-generated content in the lead-up to the election. The law was sparked by a series of parody videos created by AI and using deepfakes to mock Kamala Harris on social media.
I, Kamala Harris, am your Democrat candidate for president because Joe Biden finally exposed his senility at the debate. Thanks, Joe. I was selected because I am the ultimate diversity hire. I'm both a woman and a person of color. So if you criticize anything I say, you're both sexist and racist. I may not know the first thing about running the country, but remember, that's a good thing if you're a deep state puppet. I had 4 years under the tutelage of the ultimate deep state puppet, a wonderful mentor, Joe Biden. Joe taught me rule number 1, carefully hide your total incompetence. I take insignificant things and I discuss them as if they're significant. And I believe that exploring the significance of the insignificant is in itself significant.
Talking about the significance of the passage of time. Right? The significance of the passage of time. So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time, and there is such great significance to the passage of time.
Another trick is trying to sound black. I pretend to celebrate Kwanzaa, and in my speeches, I always do my best Barack Obama impression.
So hear me when I say, I know Donald Trump's type.
And okay, look, maybe my work addressing the root causes of the border crisis were catastrophic, but my knowledge of international politics is truly shocking.
The United States shares a very important relationship, which is an alliance with the Republic of North Korea. It is an alliance that is strong and enduring.
And just remember, when voting this November, it is important to see what can be unburdened by what has been. And by what has been, I mean Joe Biden. Do you think the country went to over the past 4 years?
The law signed by Newsom makes it illegal to create and distribute AI-manipulated political content 120 days before and 60 days after Election Day. It also allows courts to stop distribution of the materials and impose civil penalties. The legislation aims to preserve election integrity and prevent AI from spreading disinformation. Newsom said, "I just signed a bill to make this illegal in the state of California. You can no longer knowingly distribute an ad or other election communications that contain materially deceptive content, including deepfakes." But Elon Musk, owner of X and freedom of speech proponent, has lashed out at the governor, banning the ad, saying, "The governor of California just made this parody video illegal in violation of the Constitution of the United States. Would be a shame if it went viral." In a hilarious twist of fate, shortly after Gavin Newsom signed the bill, the Kamala Harris parody ad went viral, with Elon Musk tweeting, "Like that time Streisand sued someone for revealing her super obvious address in Malibu. That really kept a lid on it." The new law attracted a tsunami of criticism on social media. This commentator said, "The governor of California signed a bill that could make posting memes and parody illegal. This goes against the Constitution and the First Amendment." What's happening in California will happen all across America if Kamala wins. Free speech is at risk. Elon Musk reposted this and simply replied, "Yes." And Elon Musk didn't stop at Newsom. He put Tim Walz on blast too after the VP pick condoned the limiting of free speech.
I think we need to push back on this. There's no guarantee to free speech on misinformation or hate speech, and especially around our democracy.
Elon Musk said he wants to take away your right to free speech in America. But it seems like this law isn't working out the way Newsom had hoped, with he himself becoming the subject of mockery after the Babylon Bee got creative on a hilarious new Gavin Newsom parody ad campaign.
Hi, I'm Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. This is a message for the people of America, given in my authentically recorded, non-AI voice. Thanks to my leadership over the last several years, California has become a world leader in extremist, left-wing governance. My policies were so effective that almost 1 million people are now fleeing the state every year. We even ran out of U-Hauls. During the COVID pandemic, I locked everyone in their homes and shut down businesses for months. Not the French Laundry, though. That's my favorite restaurant. Last year, I cleaned up the dangerous, messy streets of San Francisco, because Chinese Communist President Xi was coming, and I really wanted to impress him. He's my boss, after all. This year, I signed legislation that allows me to take custody of your kid if you refuse to give him artificial hormones and chop off his genitals. Because if you don't do that, you're a bigot, and bigots shouldn't be allowed to have kids. I've also led the way in green energy by banning all cars that don't run on electricity. Then I banned almost all the electricity. This is smart leadership. On my watch, the cost of living and homelessness have skyrocketed. Schools are failing. Drug dealers and human traffickers are pouring across the border. And poop has covered the sidewalks of San Francisco. This is the positive, joyful vision we offer as Democrats. That's why I'm enthusiastically endorsing Kamala Harris for president in 2024. She'll do to the country everything I did in California. Anyway, I'm California Governor Gavin Newsom, and I approve this 100% real message, which is a recording of my voice without the assistance of any AI whatsoever. This isn't a deep fake, and you can rest assured that it isn't, because I just signed an unconstitutional law outlawing deep fakes. No one would dare violate it. Thank you, and science bless America.
More of the real Kamala, the one who has been the border czar, who's overseen record numbers come in illegally through that southern border and also implemented programs to allow millions more to stay. She now wants you to believe she's tough on borders. She even said she believes in a wall now. But here she is in 2018 leading a chant calling for an end to deportations.
Down, down with deportation. Up with education. 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 Down, down with deportation.
Enough of that, please. Let's cross to Florida now to speak to Newsweek's senior editor-at-large and senior counsel for the Article 3 project, Josh Hammer. Josh, let me guess, she's changed her position on that too, though she tells us she hasn't changed her values. Is anyone still buying this baloney?
Well, what are Kamala Harris's values? I'm not sure that she would be able to identify it if she were asked that point blank in an interview. An interview, by the way, which she happens to not be giving because she is still not given a fulsome sit-down interview since she bloodlessly cooed her purported boss, Joe Biden, back in July. Trump has been at times struggling to try to land a go-to nickname for Kamala Harris. He has his trademark nicknames. There was, of course, Little Marco and Lion Ted Cruz in 2016 and all of that. Some people think that it should be Kamala because she's pretty communist leaning, you might say. I think another alternative possibility might be Camellia because she's a chameleon. She is a total chameleon. Something that she says in 2018 or 2019, 2020, who knows if she's going to believe it tomorrow, to say nothing about 3 to 4 or 5 years from now. Looking at the Electoral College map, I actually was playing around with my map earlier today, kind of doing some different alternative scenarios. It's really going to come down to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, in my opinion, is really the number one battleground state this November. Are the voters in Pennsylvania, when they are informed that Kamala Harris supported a full ban on fracking oil and natural gas as recently as 2020, how are they going to react to that? She could pretend like she didn't mean it. She could pretend like she holds a different position now. But how are you possibly supposed to believe her, especially when she refuses to sit down for an actual interview with any interviewer across the entire spectrum, even a friendly interview?
Now, you mentioned Pennsylvania. Donald Trump's going to be back there. He's going to the site of the first attempt on his life where a bullet nicked his ear after a last millisecond head turn saved his life. It's still incredible to think about. He's going to be holding another rally in Butler, Pennsylvania on October 5. And Democrat Senator for Pennsylvania, John Fetterman, has said there's growing enthusiasm for Trump in the Keystone State.
And I never agreed with our approach talking about that he's a convicted felon. It's not going to have any impact on that. It's like, what's left? He's been impeached twice. Now it's been 2 attempted assassinations, one where a bullet actually hit him. There's energy and there's kinds of anger on the ground in Pennsylvania, and people are very committed, and Trump is going to be strong.
So much is riding on the critical swing state of Pennsylvania, and I think it's very clever for Trump to return to the scene of that first assassination attempt, because the media has tried to memory hole that whole incident.
Yes. So first of all, a brilliant move by Donald Trump, utterly brilliant, to return to Butler, Pennsylvania. He actually was in Pennsylvania over the past 24 hours as well, in Indiana, Pennsylvania, a town called Indiana, not to be confused with the state. But to go back to the actual scene of when he was literally millimeters, I mean centimeters at most, probably millimeters away from having his life just taken away from us on the world stage, to go back there in a triumphant return, it is a brilliant political tactic. I mean, this is the kind of tactic that wins Trump all sorts of new converts, new fans there, because they see someone who had the courage to get up there after his brush with death. The angel of death is hovering at that point inches above his head. He gets up there and he has that iconic photo, that historic world iconic photo with the raised fist pump. To go back there, hopefully he imitates that scene. Hopefully he tries his best to recapture that exact scene where he's raising the fist there. It's a brilliant move. But you know, speaking of John Fetterman, give credit where credit is due. John Fetterman, once again, is one of the more rational Democrats out there, not necessarily a particularly high bar these days. But John Fetterman, who has been very sober, actually, when it comes to the conflict in the Middle East compared with the rest of his party, he sounds very sober here as well, saying that the whole convicted felon threat to democracy thing is not playing. No one cares. And the reason that the threat to democracy thing, by the way, Rita, is not playing is because there is one party in America right now that is literally trying to toss the opponent in jail. It's not the Republican Party. It is the party of Biden, Harris, and the Democratic Party. So that, you know, that dog won't hunt, as they say in the South and whatnot there. They're going to have to beat Trump on the actual issues. The problem, to get back to what we were just saying a few minutes ago, is that they can't talk about the issues because they have a candidate who doesn't know what she stands for and is changing her purported stance every single day, ending in Y.
Oh, gosh, projection is all the left have these days. Accuse your opponents of what you yourself are guilty of, and we see that over and over again, and not just in the US. But I wonder if the honeymoon is finally over for Kamala Harris. A new poll from the New York Times Siena College shows Trump winning in the battleground states of the Sun Belt. He leads Harris in Arizona 50% to 45%. In Georgia, the margin is 4%, 49 to 45%. And in North Carolina, Trump is ahead 49 to 47%. And we know, Josh, that historically, his numbers are understated. There's just a shyness factor when it comes to people telling pollsters that they're going to be voting for Donald Trump.
Totally. So, you know, New York Times Siena considered one of the very best pollsters here in the United States. And this is a great poll for Donald Trump. I mean, they have him comfortably ahead out in Arizona, a state that he obviously has to win. You know, he's leading in most of the higher quality polls out in Nevada as well. Nevada is a state that has not gone for Republicans at a presidential level in 2 decades, since George W. Bush won it in 2004. He's looking pretty good in Georgia right now. You know, it's going to come down to those Rust Belt states, which, by the way, is the reason that I wrote a column all the way back in March saying that he should pick J.D. Vance to be his running mate, because J.D. Vance is quite literally Mr. Rust Belt. I mean, he's from Ohio. He wrote Hillbilly Elegy. You know, he lived this life. So in this final 5-6 weeks of the campaign, let's get Tim Walz, who was born in Nebraska. He's the governor of Minnesota. He is something of a Midwestern guy himself. Let's get him up there against J.D. Vance. They're actually going to have a vice presidential debate next week, so I can't wait for that. But, you know, besides the actual kind of fisticuffs of a mano-a-mano debate, let's get them both out there having dueling rallies. Let's see which Midwesterner can actually win the hearts and minds of the actual Rust Belt voters, the white working class, the voters that Trump tapped into in 2016. I would be willing to bet that it's J.D. Vance who can tap into them in a way that Tim Walz cannot. I continue to think that Donald Trump's actually in pretty good shape to win this election.
Now, there have been more revelations about that second assassination attempt against Donald Trump. The suspect's note has been released. Ryan Wesley Routh wrote, "This was an assassination attempt on Donald Trump, but I am so sorry failed you. I tried my best and gave it all the gumption I could muster. It is up to you now to finish the job, and I will offer $150,000 to whoever can complete the job." Josh, what more can you tell us about this man and the way this case is being handled?
Right. So there are a few things to note here. First of all, he was planning this for months, quite literally months. Apparently, he cased out the golf course for weeks in advance. He was stalking Donald Trump from afar for months on end. He wrote this chilling letter. He actually self-published a book last year in 2023 where he actually called for the Iranian regime to assassinate Donald Trump. Now he's offering a $150,000 bounty. I mean, as if he has that cash on hand. I mean, the guy's a total lunatic. It's not like he can pay that up anyway there. But I mean, talk about something that obviously should never have happened, especially after Butler, Pennsylvania. To this day, we have not gotten answers from the U.S. Secret Service. They actually released an internal review of what happened on Friday. They really did not come to any firm conclusions there either as to what happened in either of these attempted assassinations. We're probably going to have to rely on Congress and the subpoena power. The good news is that because Ryan Routh in this letter actually said that he was going to attempt to assassinate, he used the word assassination, because of that, the Department of Justice, Attorney General Merrick Garland, and the U.S. Attorney, they are likely now to bring an additional charge. He's already been charged with 2 federal firearms charges. They're going to tack on an additional charge for attempted assassination of the President of the United States, which I and many others were calling for last year. So you have that. You also have Governor DeSantis up in Tallahassee, our capital, who's leading a concurrent investigation trying to bring attempted murder charges. DeSantis should not slow down with that. He should continue full speed ahead as well. Look, in my humble opinion, I am a proponent of capital punishment. I hope that I would prefer that this man fry and not see the light of day. But if it has to be life in prison, I guess I will take that.
There's so many unanswered questions, though, Josh, about where this man got his money from, because he doesn't seem to have any source of real income, but he did extensive travel. He was paying for that. Why didn't he spend any real time in prison? He faced dozens of serious charges, weapons of mass destruction charge. He had a police standoff for hours. There seems to be a lot of unanswered questions with this, as there is with Butler. But I want to move on to today, the Argentinian Trump, as he has been called, Javier Milei, being in New York. He met with Elon Musk, who was wearing a black MAGA cap. Tell me about the impact Milei has had on Argentina in a relatively short period of time. This is a country that went from one of the richest in its region in South America to one of the poorest, thanks to socialism, Peronism. What impact has Milei's small government approach had so far?
Well, in a very short time period, he has already taken drastic measures to turn around the Argentinian economy. I mean, inflation has come down to a relatively normal level. Wages have been increasing in real inflation-adjusted terms. GDP per capita is already on the rise, certainly relative to what it was under his predecessor. As you said, Rita, Argentina was by far one of the wealthiest countries in Latin America. In fact, I think by some measures, it was actually clearly number one for a period of time there. And it became just an absolutely indebted socialist hellhole. And, what he's been able to achieve in a very short time ought to be inspiring to those around the world who would seek to come into power in a system of leftism or totalitarianism and then be given the opportunity to try to turn around. There's a lot of meat on the bone, is what I'm trying to say, in a lot of left-wing governments all throughout the world. The story of Javier Milei and how quickly he's come in and turned this around very quickly, that should give inspiration to those seeking to challenge and depose a lot of these other left-wing socialist rulers, prime ministers, dictators, whatever their title may or may not be, all throughout the world. And also on the global stage, with what he's saying in terms of the pro-Trump rhetoric, he's casting good votes at the United Nations, by the way. Argentina has been an actually rare standout good vote when it comes to especially to Middle East issues. That was not the case under the previous government. And Argentina is a fairly large country. It's a good-sized population. So this is an important story to keep your eye on.
Absolutely. And I remember, I think it was just 2 or 3 days before that election where Milei was waving an Israeli flag at one of his rallies. So he was unashamedly pro-Israel, even when I think he was advised it could be costly for him during the election. Now, before you go, I just want to ask you about a report from Channel 12 News in Israel. They've reported that the UN, together with the US Department of Justice, is arguing that UNRWA employees who were involved in October 7 should have immunity from legal action. Can you shed any more light on this developing story? Because it seems unbelievable.
Well, it's actually even worse than that Jerusalem Post headline that the viewers just saw is indicating. So the UN is not only seeking immunity for its own employees, which, by the way, by a very large margin, happen to be moonlighting as Hamas jihadist apparatchiks. They're basically UN employees by day, jihadists by night. But it's actually worse than that, because the Joe Biden DOJ, I want to repeat this, the Joe Biden DOJ has filed a brief in court agreeing with this argument. The official stance of the United States Department of Justice is that the UNRWA employees who participated in the single largest slaughter of the Jewish people since Hitler and the Nazis were alive deserve immunity from prosecution because they're international employees. I mean, I don't have words to describe how unspeakably evil this is. And, look, if you're looking at what's happening on the world stage in general come November here in America, you really ought to pull a lever for Donald Trump, given how much the world is on fire over the past few years. But if you needed one final closing argument, it probably should be this. I mean, this is just a morally jarring and absolutely rock bottom level stance that the Joe Biden DOJ is taking. By the way, taken by Attorney General Merrick Garland, who is the son of, if I'm not mistaken, of Holocaust survivors as well.
The first man's name was Kiki. He wore such little pants. His brother was the champion, but Kiki loved to dance. The second man was Choo-Choo, a master of romance. He loved the damsel in distress, but not as much as dance. And then one day it happened. They went off to the world. They went on to a journey, idolized by the boys and girls. They learned so many lessons in all the foreign lands. But no matter where they wound up, they never stopped the dance. One day inside the station, in Amsterdam perchance, the men were dancing side by the man with the crooked glance. They turned to face each other. It was just happenstance that these two men would meet that day and do that fateful dance. Wow, you can really dance. Wow, you can really dance. He went. They said, we've both been dancing all this time. What a coincidence. And then they danced together like no one's danced before. The diplomats were dancing, they cancelled all of the war. No more. The whole world celebrated, was no more violence. And all because these men crossed paths. What a coincidence! Dance, 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 dance. Let's dance.
Do you genuinely think you are the best female breaker in Australia?
Well, I think my record speaks to that.
Is there any merit in those criticisms?
It is really sad to hear those criticisms, and I am very sorry for the backlash that the community has experienced, but I can't control how people react.
Australian journalists running after you while you're walking down the street, chasing you, asking you these questions. It must have been unlike anything you've ever experienced before. What was that moment like?
That was really wild. These people are chasing me. What do I do? But that really did put me in a state of panic.
Now it's time for Lefties Losing It. Remember angry little doom goblin Greta Thunberg? Well, she appears to have lost interest in being a full-time climate cultist. Now her main objective is to be a keffiyeh-wearing anti-Israel troll. Let's listen to her chant stupid stuff written on her phone.
Me what the people looks like. Show me what power looks like. Show me what democracy looks like.
Talking about power, for a global warming alarmist, there is a lot of fossil fuels in use right there, from the phone to the megaphone to the diesel generator on the back of that ute. Let's see if Greta can weave in some climate alarmism into her chants.
One struggle, one fight, climate justice, human rights. One struggle, one fight, climate justice, human rights.
One struggle, one fight, climate justice, human rights. Genius. That's that intersectional dementedness that the left have embraced. It's all just an anti-West, neo-Marxist ideology. The issue is never really the issue. And it's been a while since we heard from trans activist Dylan Mulvaney. I wonder what he's up to.
My pronouns are USA.
My pronouns are USA. How about it?
Okay, let's move on. Time to check in with the leader of the free world. Here is President Joe Biden struggling at the Quad address this week. There were only 3 other leaders on stage with him, and he still didn't know who to introduce or what was going to happen next. This is a little sad.
So I want to thank you all for being here. And now, who am I introducing next? Who's next?
Distinguished guests, the Prime Minister of the Republic of India.
Meanwhile, the woman who replaced him as the Democrats' presidential candidate is seeking another debate with Trump, who she seems to think was once vice president.
Well, you probably heard I would like another debate, so I'm hoping the former vice president will agree to that. But we have a lot more to discuss.
No, he was never vice president. That's you. Try to keep up. Now, I must admit, I have no idea who this next gal is, but apparently she's a pop star. For deaf people, Hayley Williams won applause from leftists for launching into an impassioned, impromptu anti-Trump rant during the 2024 iHeartRadio Music Festival last week. Have a look at this mad, fact-free diatribe.
Project 2025 is Donald Trump's playbook for controlling and punishing women, poor people, people of color, and the LGBTQ+ community. It is time for all Americans to band together and to finally defeat the Trump agenda. And the only way to do that is by confronting him at the polls. Do you want to live in a dictatorship? Well, show up and vote!
But it turns out the lies she spewed there about Trump and Project 2025 were not impromptu at all. She was reading from a script held up by one of her staff. Gosh, you'd think she could just lie from the heart. This is disappointing. Now to a couple of joyful, tolerant lefties triggered by the question, what is a woman?
What is a woman?
Can you tell me what a woman is? Because clearly you're really confused, and that's okay. It's okay to be confused.
Well, I'm confused. That's why I'm asking.
Okay.
So if you were to define it, what would it?
I'm really sorry for the loss of your brain cells.
You can't even define what a woman is, and you're saying I've lost brain cells?
You're the one who's asking, idiot. All right.
And while we are triggering lefties, here is the astute Jason L. Riley dropping some hard facts about the Obama and Trump eras and black prosperity.
You have to realize how bad things got, particularly for blacks, under the Obama presidency economically. Unemployment, which never reached double digits for whites under Obama, did not fall below double digits for blacks until the 3rd month of Obama's 7th year in office. Under Trump, black unemployment fell to 50-year lows. Black poverty fell to its lowest level on record. You saw black wages rising at more than 15% among blacks, but only 11% among whites. It may not seem like a lot, but that's a 36% difference. That is not just a continuation of something that was happening under Obama, as some people like to dismiss it. It was an acceleration. For the lowest income earners in this country, their wages under the first 3 years of the Trump administration grew at more than double the rate during Obama's second term. This was an acceleration.
We're going to have plenty more lefties losing it content with my next guest, including more of the real Kamala. You know, the one who has been the border czar, who's overseen record numbers come in illegally through that southern border and also implemented programs to allow millions more to stay. She now wants you to believe she's tough on borders. She even said she believes in a wall now. But here she is in 2018 leading a chant calling for an end to deportations.
Down, down with deportation. Up with education. 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 Down, down with deportation.
Enough of that, please. Let's cross to Florida now to speak to Newsweek's senior editor-at-large and senior counsel for the Article 3 project, Josh Hammer. Josh, let me guess, she's changed her position on that too, though she tells us she hasn't changed her values. Is anyone still buying this baloney?
Well, what are Kamala Harris's values? I'm not sure that she would be able to identify it if she were asked that point blank in an interview. An interview, by the way, which she happens to not be giving because she is still not given a fulsome sit-down interview since she bloodlessly cooed her purported boss, Joe Biden, back in July. You know, Trump has been at times struggling to try to land a go-to nickname for Kamala Harris. He has his trademark nicknames. There was, of course, Little Marco and Lion Ted Cruz in 2016 and all of that. You know, I mean, some people think that it should be Kamala because she's pretty communist leaning, you might say. I mean, I think another alternative possibility might be Camellia because she's a chameleon. I mean, she is a total chameleon. I mean, something that she says in 2018 or 2019, 2020, who knows if she's going to believe it tomorrow, to say nothing about 3 to 4 or 5 years from now. You know, looking at the Electoral College map, I actually was playing around with my map earlier today, kind of doing some different alternative scenarios. It's really going to come down to Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, in my opinion, is really the #1 battleground state this November. Are the voters in Pennsylvania, when they are informed that Kamala Harris supported a full ban on fracking oil and natural gas as recently as 2020, how are they going to react to that? I mean, she could pretend like she didn't mean it. She could pretend like she holds a different position now. But how are you possibly supposed to believe her, especially when she refuses to sit down for an actual interview with any interviewer across the entire spectrum, even a friendly interview?